To get us started today, I'm really excited about our next guest. You had a preview of him before, and we've invited Alan November to get us thinking about learning and teaching. Now, Alan is an international leader in education, and he really pushes the boundaries of how to improve teaching and learning. His areas of expertise include planning, cross-curriculum, staff development, new school design, community building, leadership and development. He does it all. And Alan is named one of the 15 nation's most influential thinkers by Tech and Learning magazine for the decade. His writing includes numerous articles and best-selling books, and he's joining us today from the Roxbury Innovation Center in Boston. I used to live in Boston. I know the place. It's an amazing experience, and we're thrilled to have join us today. Welcome, Alan November. Thanks for joining us, Alan.
Well, Anthony, I am honored you invited me, and I'm 3 blocks away from my very first teaching job at Roxbury High School. So it's so much fun to be in this neighborhood again. You know, I love what you're doing with the hackathon, that you're really building community around the world. I think teachers teaching teachers, we can't get enough of that. So these are stories I've collected from teachers, and I want to share these with you. They're inspiring to me, and I'll be very curious to know if they're inspiring for you as well. The first one is mathtrain.tv. That's where I'm going. And this is a website out of Los Angeles by an amazing 6th grade teacher, Eric Marcos, who figured out that kids creating tutorials to help other kids learn can be more powerful than a teacher's knowledge. In fact, there's good research at Harvard working around this concept they call the curse of knowledge, where teachers just know too much to understand a first-time learner. And it turns out that another first-time learner who has just experienced this new knowledge can often be the best teacher. It's a crazy concept, but take a look. So I'm taking a look at my screen, and this is a 3-minute video on factoring. 12-year-old produced.
Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm going to show you how to do prime factorization. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a factor tree. A factor tree is you take a number, such as the number 32, and you break it up into its prime factors. So 32, we're going to break it up.
Okay, so I think you get it. She keeps going. She factors 32. If you're curious to know the answer, it's 2 to the 5th. And she actually does it 2 different ways. And she does this for no grade, no points. In fact, most of the class does this just for the joy of creating content to help classmates learn. So rather than the motivation of a grade, which I don't think motivates every child anyway, this is a sense of purpose, that you're actually helping other people. And purpose can be a really powerful motivator. I also want to show you a map. This map is the cluster map on my friend's website, and it shows through these red dots all of the different countries where people are using this content. In fact, yellow ones are live. So right now we are live in Saudi Arabia and Eastern Europe and the United Kingdom and here in Boston and other places. It's pretty amazing how many of you have. Seattle just came on. You can see this live. So what's fascinating is to show this map to kids, which I had the joy of doing one day, and to say, look, guys, people all over the world are using your stuff. And the kids didn't believe me when I told them this. And one little girl walked out. She walked away. And I said, where are you going? You can't leave. We're working here. And she said, no, I have to go. I got to make another one right now. And I said, what do you mean right now? We're having a meeting. And she points at all the red dots on this map, and she says, I just found out. The world needs me. I got to work right now. So I'm also fascinated by motivation of a global audience, that a lot of kids will work harder if they think they're helping people all over the world. So I just love the idea that we can envision our classrooms, every one of them, as the world needs the work your kids do. I think that's a really powerful idea. In that regard, many of you are on Twitter, but I just want to show you one first grade teacher's use of Twitter out of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, a friend of mine named Kathy Cassidy. This is her Twitter feed of the classrooms she is following. So one of the classrooms she's following is from Vietnam. By the way, another one is from Italy, another one's from Argentina, west coast of Canada and the United States. And these kids have jobs in the first grade to go see what the kids around the world are tweeting out. And these kids will find inspiring images. Now, this happens to be the Twitter feed out of Vietnam, and the kids might see a camera made out of junk that these kids are building and using, and they'll go up to their teacher. They're so inspired by what other kids have done, they'll say, hey, can we bake this? They're doing it in Vietnam. And my friend Kathy, and I love her for this, always says, I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry, I can't help you. But she has the Skype addresses of all these classrooms around the world. So the first graders say, hey, no problem. We'll just Skype the kids in Vietnam, and they'll teach us how to make the video camera. We don't really need you. They don't say that, but that's what they intend. And Kathy is building this amazing sense of teaching children to get ideas that inspire them beyond her own classroom. I actually think that's really important, that children know what's going on around the world. They develop a sense of global empathy. They develop communication skills. They're inspired beyond what their own teacher might understand and be able to do. So this is not for every teacher, because you have to have some willingness and comfort at first grade children wanting to do things you don't know how to do. But Kathy loves that because it also inspires her to learn new things. So this is a wonderful use of Twitter. Since so many of you on, I just think every teacher ought to be connected, teaching kids how other kids are learning around the world. Now, there's another Twitter example I want to show. Maybe the most important single word I could give you today to think about is changing the word solve to involve. See, there's two kinds of problems we can give kids. One is called a well-structured problem. Teacher knows the answer, and we say solve. Solve for X, solve a physics problem, solve chemistry, solve, solve, solve. But if you say involve, kids have to create their own problem. So I'll give you an example. This teacher, Jessica Cavanis, outside Dallas, Capel High School, was Teacher of the Year about a year after she did this, starts showing kids photographs. She takes on her cell phone. And she says, involve volume. Now, the obvious problem is just to solve the volume of this cup. But kids' imagination and creativity can really click in. So here, I'll show you. This student, the first student to tweet back, puts in a vertical and a radius. Those are good numbers. And invents an ice cube. Those are good numbers too. And he basically says, if there's an inch left at the top of this cup, and I add those 3 ice cubes, will the cup overflow? Now, that problem involves physics. You have to understand buoyancy. You have to understand the displacement of ice. It is more complicated than you would probably give in any geometry classroom, especially if you have to cover the curriculum. But if you're doing this for extra credit many times a week, I think we've underestimated what kids will do if they're given more challenge, not less. And so my friend has discovered that if you don't give the same problem to every student, which was the way she used to do things, but you get kids to design their own problems, you get these breakthroughs in creative thinking. And of course, if you're using a social media, such as Twitter, you inspire the other kids to go beyond their thinking as well. Excuse me. So I'm fascinated by kids teaching kids. And so I just want to now show you a quick video of a high school student. This also connects to the curse of knowledge. Sometimes the story that goes along with content is really important to inspire kids. So this is a 16-year-old girl explaining what I think is incredibly boring, delta X, delta Y, delta Z. I'm going to play a couple seconds of it for you. See if you can catch what's the difference between how a student explains something compared to a teacher.
Hey guys, it's Roya, and today I'll be talking about position. Position is defined as an object's location in relation to a reference point, and that's usually labeled 0 if you're working in 1 dimension, or the origin if you're working in 2 dimensions. Now, say there was this really cute guy sitting in the movie theater, and I wanted to sit next to him because maybe we'd strike up a conversation or something. I don't want to be too obvious, I don't want to sit 1 chair away, but maybe I'll sit 2 chairs away. And if I want to do that, I have 2 options. I can sit here, or I can sit here. These are both the same distance away from the boy, but they're at different locations in space. Therefore, one must...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. So you probably got it. The typical teacher is not going to talk about the cute guy in the movie theater. But a teenage girl will put that story with delta X. By the way, she goes on to explain delta Y and delta Z. What fascinates me is that sometimes I'll run a workshop for kids to figure out how to design tutorials for other kids. And I'll explain that you don't have to be a great artist or graphic designer. You can use stick figures. And so I was showing this video, about as much as I just showed you, to about 25 kids, none of whom were taking physics. And I stopped it at about this point because I had made the reference to the stick figures, and it was enough. And every kid in that room, the first time I did this, said, play it till the end. We want to hear it. Play it till the end. So I watched 25 kids who aren't taking physics, totally glued to this video that this girl created. And at the end, I said, if you're not taking physics, and I showed you enough about stick figures, why did you want to see the video? And one girl says, I had to know if she got the cute guy in the movie theater. And then I asked them about delta X, delta Y, and delta Z, and every kid had understood those concepts. And one boy even said, you know, I thought I was too dumb to take physics. I thought that was really hard class. But I understood everything she said. Maybe I should take physics. So I was fascinated that cute guy in the movie theater, you know, was enough to capture students' imagination who weren't even taking physics, and for at least one boy, if not more in that class, to really consider that they ought to take physics. So I'm absolutely fascinated by kids creating content to help other kids. By the way, I also think it gives great insights to teachers to understand more about how their students are learning, because when students have to explain things or watch what other kids are doing in Vietnam in a first grade classroom from Canada and work with those kids over Skype, that gives an opportunity for teachers to talk less and listen more. And I am convinced over the next decade that more knowledge is going to be available on the internet for what we call core content, like these teachers' websites, for example. So the value of a teacher's knowledge, I think, is going to go down as a value. But teachers will be more important because of their ability to diagnose each student's learning style. And so by designing classrooms where kids are doing more and more and more of the work, creating content to help others, looking around the world for ideas, and teachers are carefully observing, I think that's a major shift in the job description of teachers. I also think it's a major shift in the job description of kids, that while now kids more consume content, and you'll have to forgive my somewhat cynical view that we spoon feed them what we now call lesson plan curriculum. We tell them the answers, and then we expect them to do well on tests. My sense is that when students become designers of problems rather than be handed problems, We're going to be teaching more for understanding than regurgitation. So I think these teachers are incredibly inspiring. It's an amazing time to be alive, but I'm a little worried that I'm not seeing a lot of this, and I'm going to offer my own sense of why we're not. A lot of this represents a shift of control for kids to do a lot more work and teachers to really be careful observers rather than be transferring their knowledge. And I think that's difficult. I think it's more difficult actually than learning a new app, that letting go of control is really difficult, and that's a lot of the real work in front of us. But once we get past that and we recognize that we've underestimated kids' willingness to work on increasingly complex problems connected globally, it's a blast. So thanks for letting me hang with you guys and share some inspiring stories.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you so much, Alan. I am so inspired by hearing stories of students teaching other students. I think that's such a critical thing that doesn't happen enough in the classroom. That Math Train video, he's been a hero of mine for a long time, and I used to show, there's a video on YouTube that's an interview with him and his students about how that's worked in the classroom. It's so inspiring. It's definitely been something I thought, if I was back in the classroom teaching math again, my kids would definitely be making videos teaching each other how to, those concepts. So first question for you, Alan, and then we're gonna put it out to you in the live audience. You guys can have a chance to ask Alan a question. The microphone is right there. And if you're online, just look at the Ask a Question button, click that, type your question in. I have Eve standing by who will hop up and bring any of your online questions straight to us. So first question, Alan, is you talked a lot about social media. And social media can be not just scary for teachers, but for parents. So my question is, how do you help parents understand that social media can be a very valuable learning tool?
Media can be a very valuable learning tool.
You know, I actually do a lot of parent nights, and I love them. And you're right, parents have a lot of trepidation and fear and maybe even anxiety around losing control. I mean, I remember the first time I had to text my kid to come down for dinner. You know, instead of going up, I texted my kid. That worked, by the way. And so what I've learned, stop laughing, you're getting me upset. So what I've learned is that sometimes we don't know what we don't know, but we think we know. So for example, I'll ask kids, do you want to be something in life? And this one boy said, yeah, I want to be working for ESPN. I want to do graphic artists. I want to do the graphics for all the sports shows. And I showed him the ESPN Graphic Arts Twitter feed. And I showed him what they're tweeting out, all professional. And then I showed him who they're following. And the ESPN Graphic Arts Department is following other graphic arts departments around the world, different universities, networks, other design groups, awards. And I said, look, if you're going to go in for an interview, you might want to really be jumping on this and understanding what is up to the minute at ESPN and see who they're following. And this might introduce you to more jobs. Now, this boy immediately, who knew Twitter, but didn't know how to use it to help inspire him for his at that moment, chosen profession, was an eye-opener for this boy. And I am convinced that social media obviously has its bad points. Well, so does learning to read. A lot of stuff that's written isn't any good, but we give kids good examples in school. And I think we should do the same thing with Twitter. We should give people good examples because you know what? It's not going away.
No, it isn't.
And parents can be very responsive when they see the good parts of it.
That's awesome. Fabulous. So I think, Eve, do we have any questions coming in from our online audience? You want to pop up the mic and...
Great.
So a lot of people are inspired by Alan's presentation, so thank you so much. We have lots of questions. Rachel is asking about letting go of control and how can you start doing it, because it's not easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Letting go? Yeah, no, that's not easy. Actually, I have a couple of letting go of control tricks. If you're in elementary school, well, about the most fun you can have letting go of control is to get a first grader, second grader to teach you how to use Minecraft, where you flip things around, and because a lot of kids understand Minecraft. And then if you look around, you'll see teachers who are using Minecraft. I think we're going to hear from Tammy Dunbar later, who's another hero of mine on Minecraft. And that can be just huge fun, just having kids teach you a skill you don't know. So you might start with Minecraft in elementary school. At secondary, I think the best idea I've seen to begin to let go of control also comes out of Harvard. It comes out of Eric Mazur's classroom. Eric's the Dean of Applied Physics at Harvard, and he teaches an introduction to physics class. I've been in his classroom many times. It's one of the most amazing learning environments I've ever seen. So Eric did some research and sorted out that to give kids a test, you ordinarily give them some questions. All the kids get the same questions. They take the same test, same amount of time. And then the professor, the teacher, collects the test. We all know how that goes. So Eric does that, but as soon as that test is finished, he gives kids the same test again, but this time in groups of 4 or 5. And each team has to sort out what's the answer to every question. So they're going through the same exact test. Now, Eric walks around the room. Earlier, I referenced talk less, listen more. So Eric walks around the room and he listens to his students debate the answers to the test. He is convinced that kids learn more, if you did this all year, defending their position, questioning classmates, defend, question, all year. You learn more that way. Eric learns more about his students. It's a really powerful idea. You don't have to go over the test the next day, because you just give kids the answers at the end of the second round. So that would be a strategy, since every teacher in a major academic subject has to give a test. Try this. Give the same test twice. See if you don't learn a lot more about your students by letting go of a little bit more control. By the way, Eric does a 50-50 split in points between the individual test and the group test. I've had high school teachers who aren't comfortable with that, giving up all those points to a group. So some high school teachers will do 80-20, 70-30, but that would be a logical first step of giving up some control to the kids, having them basically go over the test, not the teacher, but immediately following taking the first test.
So, live audience, come on. Alan, November, how often do you... Oh, I see Robin. Robin, run over there. There you go. Robin Lowell. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Robin Lowell, and I'm actually at a Big Picture Learning School here in Issaquah, Washington. And our question is our motivated learners are doing great. They're coming up with amazing project ideas. They're working and they're finding creative ways to enhance their learning. But our biggest struggle right now is our unmotivated learners. They don't know where to start. They don't know what to do, and so they actually are really struggling to even get started. And some of them are getting depressed and trying to figure out how this all works. So any advice on our unmotivated learners would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Great question.
Well, it sounds like it is a great question. It sounds like we both agree all kids love to learn. It's just that some kids don't love school. So I said I used to teach near here. I had some seriously unmotivated learners. So I'll tell you what I did. Nearby where I'm standing is a major hospital in Boston, Boston City Hospital. And if you're from this neighborhood, chances are you're going to go to the emergency room there and, under a medical crisis. And so one day, I was actually teaching biology and chemistry, and a roommate of mine who was a doctor had one of my students pull up in an ambulance, unfortunately. It was a really interesting medical problem. But the boy waited too long. Nobody gave him medical support for his condition until it was really late. And it was a shame, my friend tells me. They said, look, you ought to teach your students about medical care, how to get it. There's all these clinics all around. This was unnecessary. So what I did is I asked my students to go to Boston City Hospital, and we looked at every medical facility we could find in the neighborhood and work on organizing all that information for the community. And we actually got a storefront for free in this neighborhood and started handing out information, interacting with the community. Now, I know this sounds weird, but I had kids who would work after school because they knew they were helping their community, who would not focus on classwork. So I'm going to go back to this sense of purpose. If you're going to give grades, I don't know that unmotivated kids are motivated by grades. So maybe we need to switch out the value system to a different value system. And I'm very influenced, by the way, by a book called Drive by Dan Pink, who explains that there are three motivators. And if you haven't read Drive, you may want to. The three most powerful motivators are purpose, autonomy, which is choice, and mastery. So there's another thing we can talk about is how do you go to a mastery model rather than a punishment grading model. But I love purpose. That's my favorite motivator.
Yeah, and I think too, kids that aren't motivated, grades certainly aren't going to motivate them. And I think, isn't it better to give them a sense of purpose and some way that they can contribute to their community and to the real life? I mean, that's the purpose of school, not to make kids amazing at calculus or whatever, but to create them into good, well-intentioned adults who are doing good things for the community. So we have time for just one more question. So online audience, Eve, do we have anything coming in? Thank you, Robin.
One question that keeps coming again and again, it's that conflict between student-based learning and creating autonomy for these students to create their own projects, and also standardized tests. So even for the educators that want to do the right thing and be more inclusive, how do we balance kind of, the fact that there are standardized tests and everybody needs to get a grade at the end?
Right. So, there's no perfect answer, I don't think. But if we're looking at, you mentioned autonomy, I'm convinced that the people who study game theory realize that when kids are playing a video game, they have lots of choices. Now, some of those choices lead to dead ends, and they have to learn from that and back up. And they could go a long way, in fact, down a wrong path and back up. But they do. They seem to, when given choice and not punishment, so you can die 1,000 times and still get the highest point in the world. So my sense is we punish way too much, that we ought to be paying attention to game theory a lot more. By the way, great hashtag, GBL. I think every educator should be following hashtag GBL. Because if we could only import the design elements of a game into our standard curriculum for standard tests, I think we'd be much better off. And choice is absolutely critical. So if you saw mathtrain.tv earlier, you saw one little video that I showed that can help kids learn how to factor. By the way, that video has been seen over 90,000 times. And there's a whole library of videos on that teacher's website. In fact, there's 6 or 7 videos in the same content by 6 or 7 different kids, boys, girls. And so you even get a choice of who's teaching you. So I don't think we've begun to understand autonomy, how important it is for kids to have the power of their own choice within the structure of aiming towards standard tests, because I can't make those go away on my own. I have figured that part out. But I don't have to teach. They don't tell me how to teach, and I want autonomy to motivate those kids.
Thank you, Alan. Oh my gosh, you guys, let's get Alan a big round of applause. I always learn every time I hear from Alan. I know you guys
Fun to
did
be
too.
here.
So Anthony, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sonia. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. I think you really put us in the right space to really understand how we can expect more from our students every day. This is one of the things I always say. If we can get our students walking to classrooms expecting more from their learning environment, from their own future, the battle is really started. We can really make a difference in really changing lives with the kids. And really, you sparked creativity and curiosity in all of us, Alan. So thanks very much for joining us today.